In today's video, we're bringing you the second part of the We Are Yesterday arc, now in Justice League Unlimited number 6. The chapter begins 2 months ago in the current timeline, deep in the African jungle, where a mournful cry echoed through the ancient trees of the mysterious gorilla city. It was a voice heavy with resentment, lost in thoughts about a life marked by rejection and loneliness. He had been rejected by humans, noisy, destructive creatures who had turned the planet into a selfish battleground. To protect themselves, the gorillas had to hide. But even among his own kind, Grodd found no comfort. His intelligence, far beyond average, sparked fear, not admiration. And because he refused to follow the path of submissive pacifism, he was branded a traitor. Grodd carried a burden, a mind too brilliant to be understood. Even with all his power, he remained confined, isolated, until that day. At that moment, something whispered in his mind, an ethereal entity, a bodiless consciousness drifting in search of refuge. Grodd drew it in, and then his mind exploded with possibilities. Disjointed images and fragments of power flooded his brain. He recognized that force. It was the legacy of the Martian Manhunter. After the Absolute Power saga ended, many heroes lost their powers or had them swapped. And now we discover that Martian Manhunter's powers ended up with Grodd. Telepathy, telekinesis, everything was reconfiguring inside him. And along with it came an old certainty. It was time to take revenge on humanity. The recent formation of Justice League Unlimited was an obstacle to his rise. He couldn't confront them head-on yet. He needed an ally, someone on the inside. But the champions of justice had an indomitable will. They wouldn't be easily manipulated. Grodd mentally scanned for potential allies and realized that the villains of the past, Luthor, Joker, Sinestro, and Black Manta, were outdated, broken, or redeemed. Evil needed to be reborn in its purest form. That's when the idea sparked. Don't find an old villain. Create a new one. Then we cut to Austin, Texas. A young hero named Airwave had just received, from Superman himself, an access card to the League. Nervous, he could barely say thank you. Superman smiled and said the kid had earned it. His role in Amanda Waller's fall during the events of Absolute Power had been essential. Watching from a distance, Grodd was already setting his plan in motion. Airwave was the ideal candidate. Newcomer, displaced in time, vulnerable. The kid had lived outside his era for decades and knew little of the modern world, fertile ground for manipulation. When an emergency arose on the space station, Airwave was the first to respond, unaware that it was all part of Grodd's illusion. There, he encountered a supposed villain, Deathbolt, a mercenary claiming to work for billionaires willing to destroy the satellite for profit. Of course, Airwave believed him, but none of it was real. He was still in a dark alley, trapped in a mental simulation created by Grodd. Even so, the kid kept his faith in the League. He said he wasn't alone. But the villain laughed and mocked the idea, calling the League a bunch of fakes. Then suddenly, Deathbolt was eliminated by a treacherous shot. And there was Grodd taking on the role of savior. He introduced himself as a friend, an ally who knew the truth about the League, and began planting doubts in the boy's mind, claiming the kid didn't know who he was dealing with. Grodd then began his psychological game. He painted the heroes as cruel gods who watched the world from afar, cold and indifferent, pulling all the strings. He said that any attempt to restore order was wiped out, just like what happened to Amanda Waller. As proof, Grodd pointed to the silence of the tower. No one had answered the kid's calls for help, but that wasn't enough. To break Airwave's resistance, Grodd played a cruel bluff. He told the poor kid he was dying, and that the League knew it, but didn't tell him. Grodd's lie was that the boy's time jumps had contaminated him with tachyon radiation. If nothing was done, he'd be erased from time, retroactively. Everything he lived, everything he achieved would disappear. Desperate, Airwave begged for help, and Grodd, feigning compassion, promised to cure him. But first, he needed the boy's help to access something. In orbit, Grodd laid out his plan. He would use the stolen memories of Martian Manhunter to locate temporal rifts left behind after Darkseid's death, portals that only tachyon energy users could cross. Airwave had to infuse Grodd with that energy. Together, they would travel back in time to reunite with old allies and seek a cure. The plan sounded noble, but it was a trick. Grodd hurled himself into the past with a wicked grin. He knew exactly what to do. Recruit Luthor, Scarecrow, Sinestro, and others from the past, and bring them to the present to rebuild the Legion of Doom and construct an empire from the shadows. In the present, Airwave was acting as a spy inside the League's tower, and without realizing it, he carried the weight of betrayal. It was from Grodd's plan that the villains began executing several strategic attacks against the League, disguised as a super-terrorist group called Inferno. And that's when we finally reach the present, with Airwave discovering who Grodd's so-called friends really were. Inside the Hall of Perdition, the boy recognized every single face: Black Manta, Joker, Cheetah, Bizarro, Sinestro, Captain Cold, and Lex Luthor, all notorious villains. When reality hit him, Airwave tried to warn the League, but Lex Luthor appeared with a chilling smile, because the place was communication-proof. Meanwhile, Mr. Terrific at the Watchtower detected Airwave's energy signature when he and Grodd teleported. He summoned and dispatched all available Justice League members, but it was already too late. Grodd had already ripped everything from Airwave's mind: the secrets of the League, the Fortress of Solitude, the Rock of Eternity, and much more. Captain Cold suggested they mind control the kid, but Grodd refused. Sinestro reminded them they'd need more tachyon energy for the next phase of the plan. Enraged, Airwave tried to confront them, asking if everything about him had been a lie. Grodd coldly responded that he never lied about the boy dying. And then he fired a strange weapon at him, a weapon that disintegrated Airwave and erased him completely from existence. At that moment, the League's heroes arrived. Green Lantern ordered the attack, and he had some heavy hitters by his side: Wonder Woman, Shazam, Flash, Donna Troy, Firestorm, and many others. But the truth was, Grodd had already prepared for this. His allies fired weapons similar to the one that destroyed Wind Rider, meant to disintegrate the Justice League. Grodd smiled wickedly as the words echoed in his mind. The war had begun.